Shalom, shalom, chavrim. I'm Jana Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, and this evening we have the pleasure of having Dr. Michael Brown with us from North Carolina, actually. And Dr. Brown, your website is Ask Dr. Wait a minute, I don't want to get it wrong. I'm going to have you tell us what your website is, so I don't get this wrong.
Sure, it's askdrbrown.org, askdrbrown.org.
Thank you very much for joining us here this evening. We all watched the debate that you had, which we considered it more a dialogue with Adam Green, and we saw that a lot of our differences and stuff actually begin to get closer bridged, even with the debate slash dialogue that you had with Adam Green. And we also, from what we could tell, you were really you spent a lot more time at least researching the issue that we have with the Noahide laws, and I think that that's one thing that has helped close some of that gap there. So we want to invite you here tonight for a very, we'll be open-minded and candid as well for both of us, and just lay things out on the table. And we've asked also the people in our chat room to please be respectful when you comment. If you've got a disagreement, I do ask that you do it in kindness, because it's not. You have to keep in mind we're all believers in Jesus Christ here, and so the thing is we're trying to come to an understanding of our differences, and also deal with what we feel like that we're facing, at least on our end, what we're facing with the Noahide laws that are being exercised every year at the White House being signed, even though it's considered quote unquote ceremonial. I know that I wouldn't want to see Sharia laws signed every year, ceremonial, in the White House. And it's not so much just the fact of this, the way the Noahide laws are listed. It's the fact that they're sub-laws, they're Talmudic. And I know not everything that's Talmudic we would consider to be taboo, so I understand that point as well. But these things here we feel like could be very, very serious in the not-so-distant future. So Dr. Brown, welcome to our program.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. And as we committed right before the show, let's be as forthright as we can to make sure that we air one of those differences. And I've really asked you to speak as freely, plainly, raise concerns, speak plainly. I know there's mutual respect as fellow brothers and sisters in Jesus, and that's what unites us. And all we want is the truth. That's all I care about. I believe that that's what you care about. So if we put everything on the table, and I understand if I say, I think you're 100% wrong on that, and it's ridiculous, you can say the exact same thing to me, and we're not going to offend each other. But we want clarity, and that's all, before the Lord. So I really appreciate you both having me on. And I'm from New York, so if I say you guys, that's just New York terminology for male, female together.
It's fine. We will say you all.
Well, I say you guys a lot as well, but my dad is from Long Island, New York, so that's why.
Is
so.
it you all Southern?
Y'all. I'll say y'all.
Y'all, yep.
Yeah.
Which actually includes everybody. So anyway, I know that kind of share. Let me get this.
Okay. They have a static on Dr. Brown's volumes on the loud side.
Well, because he's closer is why to the microphone. It's just the way it's recording. And by the way, if you guys are having any trouble with audio right now, just keep in mind we are recording as well, so therefore we can always edit these. We'll edit the video, we can reload it afterwards, so that we'll have a better audio quality there. And what it is, it's not so much a static, it's the fact that there's so many things that are running through this computer right now. This little fan is a little bit loud, and it doesn't sound loud on our end, but I know it does pick that up, and it's because we've got a little issue on desktop audio. So at any rate, and if they're saying Dr. Brown's a little loud, let me see if I can't. I'll try to adjust that. Whoop, no. That might help it right there to kind of balance out. Anyway, let's go. We'll get started here, though, to pick up some things there. What do you want to?
Well, first of all, I want to ask you, Dr. Brown, Brother Michael, you as a Jew, you have a Jewish background. Did you ever study Talmud, Judaism in general, deeply, or you were not really exposed deeply to study of Talmud and Zohar and Kabbalah?
Yeah, so before I was a believer, I came to faith at the age of 16 as a heavy drug user, and I came to faith when I went to a church to pull my best friends out. So I was not raised in a traditional home. I was bar mitzvahed. I knew enough as a Jew to know that we didn't believe in Jesus, but I wasn't exposed to a lot of anti-Semitism growing up, Jew and Gentile. We went to the same schools together, and I learned enough Hebrew to do my bar mitzvah portion, but I didn't even know what I was reading. And then I got heavily into drugs for a couple of years. It was only after I came to the Lord and I was challenged by the rabbis. I didn't know Hebrew. So that's what got me on the path of learning Hebrew and getting my doctorate in Semitic languages. And then in the midst of that, in order to better understand the literature of our people and the viewpoint of the rabbis, that's when I started to study Talmud, and over the years with rabbis, other times just independently, and sometimes teaching classes where we would get into some Talmudic things. I wrote 28 articles on Talmudic rabbis for the Oxford Dictionary of Jewish Religion. So I learned things well enough to be able to contribute to a scholarly volume. Kabbalah, much less over the years. So I've dabbled in Zohar, and I understand the Kabbalistic systems, and I've looked at the larger philosophical issues, but I haven't delved into that as much. So for decades, I've done study in Talmud, and then, of course, all the rabbinic commentaries and some of the law codes and things like that. But that was all after I came to faith. So it was all through the lens of a believer looking at it differently than I would have if I was raised in it.
Right. I know about your debates. I learned about your debates with rabbis, and I really appreciated your defense of divinity of Jesus Christ. And if I can ask you, just for the purpose that we have it clear, you believe that Jesus is God in flesh, Emmanuel, God with us, that he's divine, Son of God, but God himself. You are believing in a Trinity. So can you explain what you really believe in?
Yes, I'm 100% with you. Jesus, first and foremost, is the only way to God, only way to the Father. Outside of him, there's no salvation for Jew or Gentile. So every fiber of my being wants to see Jewish people come to faith. I've written 5 volumes on answering Jewish objections to Jesus and other Jewish outreach books, and have been branded public enemy number 1 by Orthodox rabbis for our work. And I've had many debates, built close relationships with folks over the years, love them dearly, but see them as lost outside of Jesus, and absolutely believe that he is the Word made flesh, the eternal, only God, walking on the earth among us. I absolutely believe in God's eternal triune nature, Father, Son, Spirit. When communicating with Jews, I've often spoken of his complex unity, because many times when they hear Trinity, they think 3 gods. But yes, I believe God is eternally Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and that the Son is eternal God walking in the flesh among us. Yeah, so with you on that, point for point.
Okay. Now, when it comes to Noahide laws, do you actually believe that these are innocent, good laws? Because we had this impression that you said that these are not really dangerous laws. They are actually based on Tanakh, and that they're not really bad laws,
Okay, so let me divide that into 3 sections. Are they based on Tanakh? Are they bad laws in themselves? And are they dangerous? So, no, they're not based directly on Tanakh, because the Talmudic rabbis derive them from Genesis 2 and Genesis 9, and you can't get the 7 laws of Noah directly from that. You can get some, like prohibition of murder in Genesis 9:6. But number 1, they're not directly based on Tanakh. They are, in terms of drawing them from those texts, they're based on rabbinic interpretation. And the rabbis say so. It's rabbinic exegesis. That's number 1. Number 2, as far as them being bad laws, if we understand idolatry the way you and I would as followers of Jesus, then we agree that idolatry is prohibited. In other words, we would affirm all of those 7 principles, that it's wrong to commit idolatry or to blaspheme, it's wrong to murder, steal, commit adultery, we should establish courts of justice, we shouldn't eat the flesh of a living animal. We'd all agree that those things are good. Do I believe that we're supposed to preach those to the world? No, of course not. We're supposed to preach Jesus to the world. Do I believe that God gave those to the nations, and if the nations live by those, they're righteous? No one's righteous outside of the gospel. So in terms of whether what they say is true, yeah, those 7 principles I agree with. I think any Christian would. As to whether we should be preaching them to the nations or God gave them to the nations, no to both of those. And here's where I think we have our biggest difference as to whether they're dangerous. I see them in terms of legal application as simply Jewish theory and Jewish discussion, as in terms of anything binding. Jews believe that God will judge the nations based on the Noahide laws and things like that. But as far as implementation, as far as the possibility that they could become law and that the death penalty would be practiced, I don't see a danger in that at all. The understanding that I have, and as I've researched it and interacted with Orthodox rabbis as well, is that in the Messianic era, so what a Jew would believe that the Messiah would bring the nation of Israel into obedience to the law and destroy the wicked and establish universal peace on the earth, rebuild the temple, regather the exiles, and all of that, that during that time that all of God's laws would be enforced. So according to the rabbinic understanding, at that time, if a Gentile worshipped an idol, they'd be put to death. If a Jew didn't observe the Sabbath, they'd be put to death. But since that era is never going to happen, in other words, the rabbinic view of coming of the Messiah is never going to happen, it's going to be Jesus who returns, I don't see it as any possible danger in terms of being enforced. So we can get into the meaning and whether Noahide laws see Christians as idolaters or not, and would they then be subject to a potential death penalty. But I see it all as legal theory as far as actual enforcement, because the Messianic era is not here as per rabbinic understanding.
Well, I think that they are actually saying we are already in Messianic era. That's what I think they are actually propagating, that we are at the very beginning of Messianic era, and that the infrastructure is being prepared for the Noahide laws to be enforced. They are preaching and proselyting them very heavily. They actually have it as a mitzvot. Right now, as you are aware, they're re-signing the Noahide laws in the White House every year with the 10 Chabad rabbis next to our president. And I don't know if you ever looked at a Public Law 10214 yourself. Did you ever read it? Because it says specifically in there, okay, that our nation was founded on the 7 Noahide laws. It says that they are incumbent upon all humanity, and unless they are enforced through education, they want to enforce it. Unless they are enforced, the world will be in chaos. In fact, are you aware of the fact that Vatican has signed up with the Noahide laws, with the rabbis from Israel in 2007, where they said that the Noahide laws are even above personal freedoms, okay? And they both agreed mutually. We know we had Nostra Aetate, we had Vatican II. We know that there were changes in the Vatican as in relations to the Jewish people and how they view the Jewish people. And in 2007, they signed a document on the Noahide laws as being these laws are valid and they're about our personal freedoms. And also United Nations is hosting Dr. Cohen, okay? He has a website, I believe it's noahidelaws.org, I believe. And they're preaching that this is the basically way to peace and security. All right, they're using the language peace and security, and they're believing that this is how they're going to bring the peace to the world, that the world will sign on and agree to the 7 Noahide laws. And Mr. Cohen is very vocal about even death penalty. He has put it on his website as one of the decapitation as one of the laws, laws for the prohibition, when you violate any of the 7 Noahide laws. Now, it's not only that Vatican and United Nations signed up, and White House since Carter, and of course Bush Senior has put it in the law, and it was kind of passed through trickery in a Congress with 4 congressmen, and they sent everybody home, and 4 congressmen just agreed. And since that time, it's been signed every year, and Christians had no idea. This is highly unconstitutional. We don't agree with it, and we want it out of our White House. We want Noahide laws out. We do not agree in rabbinic interpretations of Noahide laws. We don't agree that they are biblical. They are totally rabbinic. They might sound very innocent, and you can pick from Tanakh, this law here, this law here, this law here, but the problem is with rabbinic interpretation of the laws. And problem is that White House, Vatican, United Nations is giving power to the rabbis, authority to the rabbis to interpret the Noahide laws and what the sub-laws are and what the punishments are. So we have a problem as Christians with all of these facts that I have mentioned to you here.
Yeah, well, first I appreciate the research that you've done and being this careful about it. And I have no desire to give Talmudic rabbis any authority over my life. I pray for them to come to know the Lord, and know many who are very sincere and others that I have bigger differences with. But I have no desire to give them authority in my life, let alone over the life of the nation. So I agree with you on that thought. But just to respond, the reason that and I'm not Catholic, so the last thing I want to do is defend the Vatican. But the reason the Vatican signed on is because the leaders who are putting this forth have the view, which has been a widespread view, especially from the Middle Ages, and I'll give you specifics and sources in a moment, that Christianity is non-idolatrous for Gentile. They would say it is for me. They always say that. That's how I first heard about Noahide laws, when Orthodox rabbis started talking to me and mentioning the concepts, etc., and said if you're a Gentile, it would be permissible, but it's not. You're a Jew. So, for example, Rabbi Chaim Miller, in his biography of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, says this: while the notion of the Trinity is rejected by the absolute monotheism of Judaism, the Rebbe pointed to numerous halachic, so legal rulings, that the Trinity is not idolatrous for non-Jew as an acceptable form of worship for him. And it references in the Rebbe's talks, Likutei Sichot 25, if you can access that, page 192 and note 56, providing halachic sources that Christianity is not idolatry. Or, for example, Rabbi Louis Jacobs, who is maybe the top conservative Jewish rabbi scholar of the last generation, he refers to this, and he said this is a frequently quoted legal maxim. A Noahide is not enjoined to reject shituf, which I know that we'll get to and talk about. And what we see is over history that the prevailing view has become that Christianity is not idolatry for Gentiles. But bottom line is, for example, you mentioned Rabbi Cohen. I think we're talking about the same Cowen, Rabbi Shimon Cohen, who's one of the most outspoken Chabad rabbis, written extensively about Noahide laws, and is one of the contributors to the book, The Divine Code. He says this is the way that Jews, Christians, and Muslims come together as one for the betterment of the world. That's what I have an issue with, trying to have some united spirituality between Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and to push for that. But when the White House signs on and says we agree with that, they're agreeing, saying that this is what Christianity, Islam, and Judaism agree on. So what I still don't understand, when I was on with Adam, I really appreciated his graciousness. He was a great host and totally fair, and I appreciate that. But I still didn't understand this, how the leap could come. So I really want to hear your perspective. The only reason that these different groups are signing on is because they understand that this applies to 2 billion Christians and 1.5 billion Muslims and 14 million Jews, that we allegedly have this in common. If the rabbi said, no, actually, it's not like this. Actually, Christianity is idolatry. We didn't just tell you our full agenda. You think that the Vatican and the United States and everyone will say, oh, well, okay, you're the rabbis, you have authority. No, they'd say, well, that's not what we signed on for. So that's what I'm still missing. That to me, it's this giant leap to get from what you're saying to that this is now going to be somehow enforced. So I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say it seems like this massive leap to me, but please explain to me how you get from the one place to the other. If my question is clear.
Yeah, I fully understand your idea of shituf. You have mentioned it in your video, so I have discussed shituf. I mean, I have researched Shituv, and I know what they're doing. They are citing Mary, Rabbi Mary of 12th century, who lived among Christians, and they are citing Tosafists, right? Tosafists also.
Yep.
I think it was like grandson of Rashi, I believe. And
Yeah.
okay, so these are the two major sources that they are citing that supposedly agreed with the notion that Christianity is not idolatry. However, majority of rabbis came against it, and they are saying complete opposite. Majority of poskim are actually saying that Christianity is indeed idolatry. Okay, so this idea of shituv, what they're saying is that there are Christian denominations who belittle Jesus to a second status of a lesser God, and they even made a list of this denomination: Christadelphians, Christian Scientists, Dawn Bible students, JWs, Jehovah's Witnesses, Iglesia Cristo, Living Church of God, Oneness, Pentecostals, Unitarian Universalist, The Way, International, some Hebrew Roots movement that say that Jesus was just a rabbi, okay, but that they worship Hashem, the Church of God International. Now, when you say that all of these Vatican that understands, the Vatican understands that this is permitted for them to worship Jesus, and I know, Stephen, that you know that this recent Pope is actually having quite different opinion on Christ lately.
Yes, he is.
Right, he's having different opinion. He's kind of not saying Jesus is God anymore.
Well, actually, Pope Francis
And,
had sent, before he became the Pope of Rome, he had actually sent cardinals to Israel, to the Noahide Center there, just outside of Jerusalem, to train under the Noahide laws. He wanted them to learn those Noahide laws. And if you do any research, Brother Michael, you look on there and you can see that the Pope of Rome himself has made some major changes in the doctrine inside the Vatican. In fact, one of those is that they're no longer allowed to say the word Jehovah, not in prayers or anything. There are several other changes he's made as well, which I didn't kind of prepare for all these here. But yeah, there has been a lot of changes on that. And while you're preparing for your next thought there, one thing I do want to mention, and I don't know if you are aware of this, Dr. Brown, or not, but in the United States, if you go back, one of the things that caught my attention when it came to the Noahide laws is that if you go back, you will notice that in the United States for more than a decade, there were case after case after case in the United States trying to remove the Ten Commandments from all the courtrooms around the United States. And this was something that, of course, I was against it from the very beginning, because in my opinion, the Ten Commandments apply to both Jew and Gentile. I don't believe that there should be a separation. I don't even think you believe that there should be a separation when it comes to the Ten Commandments as whether you're Jew or Gentile, because a Gentile is brought into the covenant. Covenant, if you want to call it the covenant of Israel, when you come into Jesus Christ, you come into that covenant. And so when we saw this, and of course, the ADLU was a lot behind that. And when I say that, a lot of this stuff, it troubles me to even bring it out, because that's my background as well. Both my family being Jews, but let's face it, the only people that ever really expose the evil that is inside of our own family, so to speak, are the Jewish people. It's the prophets. It was Isaiah, Jeremiah, Nahum. All the prophets always exposed it. And even in modern times, all the way up to this day, we've got some very prominent rabbis that expose the crimes that were done during the Holocaust, etc. So it's hard for us to say it, because this is our kindred as well. But at the same time, somebody's got to take that stand. And of course, if the Gentile does it, he's automatically labeled an anti-Semite.
Well, I would like to go back.
Okay, we'll back up.
Let's stay on subject. My husband can go off subject very easily.
Dyslexia.
But I would like to stay on the subject of shituv. Okay, I will send you personally some of the resources that are written only in Hebrew. Do you speak Hebrew? Do you read Hebrew?
Yeah, I read Hebrew.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So where they are the rabbis are actually saying that Mary and Tosafot, that's not what they meant. It was mainly about oath, when the Jewish people had to take an oath, okay? And I can read it to you from the Divine Code. I mean, I have the Divine Code here with me.
Go ahead and give
I have all of the pages.
Because he has that book as
all
well.
of the pages.
Yeah. I've got it on Kindle. Yeah, so let me just say two things,
Okay.
all right?
Sure.
All right, so I don't know if you've read the book by David Novak, respected Jewish professor.
Right.
It's published by Oxford University Press, Littman Library of Jewish Civilization. And here's what he says about Shituf. So that's the question of participation, and is it okay to believe in intermediary agents like the saints, as long as you believe that there's one creator. So this is what he, and this is one of the more comprehensive studies, analyses, legally and philosophically, of the laws of Noah, so-called Noahide laws. And he says, as halakha developed, shituf and shutfut were used interchangeably, so again, related but slightly different concepts. Whereas Rabbeinu Tam actually acknowledged only the validity of the veneration of saints by Christians, his concept of shutfut lost its original specific meaning and came to be identified with shituf. By extension, then, it was used as a Jewish legitimization of Trinitarian Christianity for Christians. Ashkenazi authorities, as a result, who consider themselves in the tradition of Rabbeinu Tam, reinterpreted his own reinterpretation of the Amoraic statement concerning Gentiles to the Talmudic statement. It will also be recalled that the Amoraic statement was a reinterpretation of an earlier Tannaitic statement. So the early rabbinic sources, we have now seen 4 stages in the development of the halakha, and he explains how everything shifted. The effect of this 4th and final development of the law was to consider pure idolatry to be, at least in the Christian West, a thing of the past. And he goes on to explain that. So again, I can cite source after source that would say the majority view it as non-idolatrous. But even if you were right and the majority viewed Christianity as idolatrous for Gentiles, even if you were right on that, okay? The ones that are making the public statements, like here's Rabbi Shimon Cohen, so Chabad rabbi, a director of the Institute for Judaism and Civilization, and one of the contributors to the Divine Code, all right, in an article by Arthur Goldberg, another contributor to the Divine Code. They put out a statement with Professor Tracy Rowland, appointed by the Pope to the International Theological Commission, and the Dean at University of Melbourne, and Ismail al-Barak, chair of Islamic Studies. Quote, the common values making up the shared ethic are found in the Abrahamic stem of the world religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So not Jehovah's Witnesses or Christadelphians or fringes in the Hebrew roots movement. So all I'm saying is that the ones that are putting this forward and getting this united front to stand with it, and the United States to say, sure, we'll put this in a document, an educational document, and sign on to it, they are saying it as if Christianity is not idolatrous. Here's what I don't get, and this is the second thing to go back to my question. I still don't see how, if they ended up saying, well, actually, we believe Christianity is idolatrous, who's going to start putting people to death? Is the United States going to say, oh, okay, then I guess just start putting us to death, okay. Senator Pompeo and Vice President Pence and Senator Ted Cruz and all the Christians. That's what I'm not getting. Okay. Where is the actual danger? Even just focus here in America.
Right. We are not saying it's going to happen under this presidency, or this is going to happen right now or next year or maybe 5 years. What we are saying is that Christians in general, okay, they are taught, because I believe that there is a big Judaizing of Christians right now, and it's pre-planned and it's an agenda. Okay, a lot of Christians are leaving Christianity and they are kind of accepting the Jewish ways, Judaism, and even the Noahidism is growing in enormous numbers right now due to proselyting of rabbis. Now, every time somebody becomes a Noahide, interestingly, it's 99.99% of ex-Christians, none of evangelicals, none of them believe Jesus Christ being God anymore. Mm-hmm. And most of them stop believing that they are, that he's even the Messiah. Okay, but even if some believe that he's a Messiah, they say, but he's not God, we're not worshiping him. Okay, because based in Israel, and I know they don't have any kind of legal status yet. I'm saying that they're preparing infrastructure for the
Yes.
future, what Jews do have in their, they do have in their sources. They want this utopia, this Jewish kingdom, the earthly Jewish kingdom. They want that, okay? And there is a source and source after source that I can give you where they are writing that they're going to have redemption. In a sense, what they believe in Judaism, what is redemption in Judaism, is that the Messiah will arrive, give them the dominion over the Gentiles. Gentiles will be serving them. And they're actually talking about, this is in their sources. Okay, that's their redemption. All right? So how is it going to happen? Well, it's, if you look at the Bible, and Bible says in book of Revelation, and I saw those who were beheaded, right, for the name of Jesus, and who is talking about beheading. I'm definitely not comfortable with Noahide laws in the White House citing that there will be beheading or violation of any of the Noahide laws and sub-laws for the non-Jew. Okay, it's not only about idolatry. However, I disagree with you that majority of rabbis are actually saying that Christianity is not idolatry. I believe that majority of rabbis are believing Christianity and Trinity is idolatry. And the rabbis who are now with, like kind of on a bridge with Christians, they're forming these friendships and bridges. Okay, these are ecumenical rabbis who pulled out those sources of Mary and Tosephists. Okay, these two main sources. But as I told you, a lot of rabbis in Israel disagree with Mary, they disagree with Tosephists, and they agree with Maimonides. And who is in Congress, United States Congress, whose picture is in a Congress? It's Maimonides. It's not Mary, it's not Tosephists. Okay, it's the Maimonides that they have a picture of right there in the United States, because majority of rabbis go by Maimonides, and according to Maimonides, which is Rambam, 12th century scholar, very respected rabbi, okay, according to him, Christianity is a full-blown idolatry. And I would like, I have made a video, I had not much time to prepare as I would like to, but I made a video that if you would be so kind, watch with me. I made it as short as possible, kind of some rabbis who are scholars, who are welcoming Noahide movement, who are constantly speaking to Noahides and proselyting for Noahidism. You will know one of those for sure. And please watch what they say about Christianity and Trinity. Please watch with me, would you?
Sure.
Okay.
One of the first rabbis that'll be on here will be Rabbi Tovia Singer, which I am acquainted very well with Rabbi Tovia Singer as you are, and he and I will say before we actually play this, I've said it many times.
What is this?
Is that you're one of the only Christian scholars that have debated this man that was able to stand up to what he says. But let's play. Let me turn this up just a little bit.
The status of Christianity and Islam in the eyes of God in the Jewish faith, they're very, very different. The question was specifically idolatry, so I'm going to answer that question in that narrow sense. Christianity is complete idolatry. Now, when I say Christianity, to be clear, there are some Christian denominations, and there are probably over 1,000 Christian denominations. Christianity is by far the most variegated religion in the world. The majority of Christians in the world, the vast majority of the Christian world, worship a man as a god of a distinct person from the Father. That's very important. And they believe in what is called the doctrine of the Trinity, which was a self-inflicted wound which the church brought upon itself, a wound from which they never recovered. So therefore Christianity is absolute idolatry because, and in fact in many ways it's the worst form of idolatry. because Christians genuinely worship the God, the Father. They worship the Father as the God, as the creator of the universe. But in addition to him, they worship Jesus. Now, it's very important. Almost all Trinitarians worship Jesus as a distinct person from the Father. So that means they have a husband, God, but they have on the side somebody else who they pray through, who they pray to. And therefore it's complete idolatry. And it's worse in that sense than just worshiping stones and trees and so on, because those who just worship idols and so on, they don't worship a father. They're not married to the Father. So Christianity definitely falls into the area of idolatry, utterly and completely. And in that, the Islam is definitely not idolatry. Muslims worship one God, absolutely worship one God. There are Christians who make claims about Islam that they worship moon gods. That's absolute nonsense. Muslims worship one God. They're very clear about that in Surah 2, 163. It's very clearly outlined in the Quran that there is no else, just one God, and therefore Islam has a unique status in that they are not idol worshippers at all. They worship one God. So that's very important. So Islam is absolutely not idolatry, and most of Christianity, most Christians are worshiping idolatry because they are Trinitarians. I should say as a caveat, I don't know if this helps, but there are some Christian denominations that absolutely reject the doctrine of the Trinity, forcefully. Christadelphians, for example, Unitarians, for example, J Witnesses, for example, they utterly reject the doctrine of the Trinity, and they consider it complete idolatry. And Islam is not idolatry at all. And they worship one God, absolutely. And their belief about Jesus as a prophet is not the issue, because they don't believe that Jesus was God, and they in fact consider it an absolute abomination to express such an idea. The question, I want to repeat it because I want to make sure. There's some people who believe that they can believe in God and believe in Jesus too, and that's okay. That's the question, right? The answer is, not only is that not okay, that's the absolute worst thing you can do. It is better to go to India and bow down to a statue than to be a Christian. It is better to go to Bali and bow down to an idol of Hanuman, the monkey god, than it is to worship Jesus as a god. I'll explain to you why. If you notice, this is called a shutfis. There are different types of idolatry, and the worst form of idolatry is called shutfis, which means a partnership. In Arabic, it's called a shirk. In Islam, it's the only sin that God will never forgive you for. Every Christian believes in the creator of the universe, but they believe also that there's another person, the second person in a triune Godhead, and that's the Son. That means you're married to God. That means you got married, but you're getting text messages from somebody else. You're getting Facebook messages in the middle of the night from someone else who's sending you kisses. That means you have betrayed your marriage to God. You're in adultery. We all know that the sin of adultery, physical or spiritual, is much worse than two people who are just not married, who are sleeping together. There's no greater abomination than worshiping someone in addition to God. I'll have no other gods on my face. That's one prohibition. That's the worst thing you can do. That means the Trinity. That means shutfis. That means that you worship the God of Israel, but you've got another God on top of it who is a separate person. That's a partnership. Because what does it mean? You shall have no other gods. Because the word Elohim in this context is a false God. The same like in Arabic. You have Allah, which is the true God, and Ella, which could be the true God or not the true God. Same way in Hebrew. So, but what is the end of the verse doing? It says Al Panai. What does the Torah say? You shall have no other gods. Should stop. But it says Al Panai on my face. That's the worst thing, because then you're married to God, but you're getting text messages from somebody else. You didn't come home last night, and you stink from somebody else's cologne. That is the worst thing you can do.
The question is Christianity idolatry? There's a large movement in the Jewish world today to try to say that Christianity is good for the non-Jew. And they quote a source that many big rabbis say is proper, that a non-Jew is allowed to believe in the concept of shitufim, partnership. They're allowed to believe that God gave a power, some of his power, and he shared it with a partner, a moon, a star, a spirit. But no Jewish source at all says that anyone is allowed to worship that partner. Jews are not allowed to even believe in partnership. The non-Jews, some rabbis say, can believe in it, but no one says that anyone can worship the partner. So the question is Christianity idolatry? Well, let's ask and find out. The question is, was he God?
Yes.
You think that, what's his name?
Jesus.
He is God?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I want. You pray to him?
To Jesus?
Yeah. Do you think that man who was crucified is God?
Yeah. He
thinks he's God. Is that man that was crucified God?
Yes.
You pray to that man?
Yes.
You worship that man?
Yes, of course.
That's idolatry.
What do you think are some of the most striking disagreements we've had?
With the Christians and the Muslims?
Yeah.
Again, I'm not sure I want to speak about this privately. Obviously, with Christianity, we disagree about the persona of the Redeemer that they look up to as a messianic or divine or semi-divine figure. Obviously, we don't. We are clearly not agreeing with that.
Okay, that's good.
Okay. 1 second.
All right, Dr. Brown, if you would, can I keep going and then you can respond?
Sure, whatever
Okay,
you like.
sure.
I'm on your show.
Okay, because there is more, and you say that there is more of those rabbis who are saying that Christianity is not idolatry, but I believe there is actually more rabbis who say otherwise. Rabbi Tovia Singer is extremely active with Noahites. There is a Noahide center in Texas, United States. He is guest, a very frequent guest with these people. He's welcoming new Noahites, okay? He is praising them for leaving Jesus because, and I understand, Tovia Singer, you have debated him, but I know that he knows what he's talking about, and he knows Judaism, and he knows the laws, and he knows Maimonides, okay? But let's go to some other, I have some stuff that I pulled up, Stephen. And I'm sorry because I have a lot of sinus infection.
One second before we pull it up.
Yeah.
Can I make one statement?
Sure.
Dr. Brown, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the day before, on October 22nd, that may have been the second day before, you and Adam had the debate. Tovia Singer came on, did a broadcast on Noahidism, on the Noahide laws, and the converts that they are winning over to Noahidism. And he said that he believes now that it is well over 1 million converts. And he was very enthusiastic about it. Now, me and Tovia, we've been friends for a long time, and I'll always say this about Tovia. One thing I appreciate about him, he's not a hypocrite. Other than that, we disagree as far as the East is from the West. But
Can I just jump in because
Sure,
I have a
sure.
history? I find Tovia to be completely unreliable. Not only a tool of the devil to draw Jews away from Jesus, but now to try to draw Gentile Christians away from Jesus, and utterly unreliable in his statements of so-called facts. If you will actually go to the Noahide Center or an article in Haaretz just from last year, it is boasting that they now have more. Noachides boast more than 20,000. They're boasting about that. I've preached in churches that are much bigger than that, okay? This is a fringe, tiny movement. Tovia is saying this because this is how he makes his money. He's gotten rich supporters in Indonesia and other places, Christians that he's pulled away from the faith and hence been used as a tool of the devil. He has lies about me, stuff I know, history, personally. I've had to rebut. I just never talked about it, but when he went public with lies, I just rebutted it. So whatever he says, I would throw out entirely. If we want to talk halakha and Jewish law and debate about that and what's he saying that's accurate or not, but what we just heard is perfect example of Tovia Singer trying to put out the nonsensical idea that in Rabbinic Judaism that it's better to go bow down before a physical earthly idol than to worship God as Trinity. That's bogus. That's nonsense. This is part of the argument that he uses to try to make Christians feel bad, like, oh no, I don't want to do this. But it is a tiny group of people that are Noachides. I hate the fact that any have fallen away. I hate the fact that he's had any success. But again, they're boasting now, the Noahide Center, that they have now worldwide more than 20,000 adherents. The idea of a million is complete fictional exaggeration to make it look like he's having this great work of success. And even if it was a million in the overall scheme of things, with well over 2 billion professing Christians, God knows how many are are genuine. This is the tip of the iceberg. I was just looking at 20,000 out of 2 billion, and it's 0.00001%. That's what we're doing. That's why I'm still saying, who's going to be doing the beheading? How is the whole thing going to turn? But I just wanted to insert that since there was that much of Tovia that we all listened to, and you made that statement. He's refused to debate me in any setting, under any circumstances, for over 25 years now. That alone should tell you something. But I'll stop now, because I know there was more that Jana wanted to get to, and then I'll come back to my other responses. But thanks for letting me jump in.
I know that you and Tovia have some issues, but I really know too that Tovia knows Halakha. He knows his Judaism very well. He knows Talmud, and he knows how Jews look at Christians and how they looked at Christians throughout centuries. Now, I don't believe this has ever changed. Okay, what I do believe is that right now, for the sake of ecumenism, this ecumenical movement, those Jews are coming out and pulling the two sources of a rabbi who lived among Christians, Mary particularly, who was afraid because, of course, Christians were hostile to Jews. So he made a statement that Christianity is not idolatry. Mary is not even highly respected rabbi, never was. They just pulled out this particular saying of his because this is what the ecumenical rabbis are using to get to Christians. Now, I would like for you to bring up also the fact of Shlomo Riskin speaking, because you spoke about Schneerson, and you say that Schneerson said that Trinity is not idolatry. On other occasions, Schneerson said Christians are idolaters. Okay, Schneerson is the one who is revered by White House on this Public Law 10214. This is always happening. The re-signing of the 7 Noahide laws is always happening on his birthday, or a day when he was born, or around that date, I should say. And they're saying, oh, how, he has accomplished so much. He's such a great educator, and they're giving him way too much credit. Where Israel Shahar, a Jew, a scholar, a chemist, survival of the Holocaust, he was a professor at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, have translated work of Schneerson. So we, in English, can understand who Schneerson really was. And he was a supremacist, racist, who said that Gentiles have animalistic souls, and they come from lower spheres, lower 3 satanic spheres, and the Jews have a divine souls, and the Jews are basically, they have these divine spark, and they are divine. Okay, so he was a total racist, and this is the person that White House is, we celebrate birthday, okay, absolutely unconstitutional. And this is in reference to Noahide laws, because he's the one, and Chabad, of course, which I consider cult, and which I consider kind of radical Judaism cult. Like we have radical Islam, I consider Chabad Jews radicals. And by all means, Chabad Jews propagate two-tier system: Jew and Gentile, Jew divine, Gentiles animals. This is in many sources. I have proven this over and over and over, okay? So, no, I really don't believe when these ecumenical rabbis are coming and speaking of Tosafis. First of all, they're completely misquoting him, because Tosafis never said, this group of rabbis, Tosafis are basically a group of rabbis of 12th century, okay, but they're only saying this applies to the oath. The entire thing was made for the purpose of a Jew to be able to make business with the Christians. Okay, so they can be in business partnership with Christians, because they specifically mention in the Tosafis that the Christians come in the name of their saints, and saints are not divine, and they pray to the same Father as ours, as long as Jesus is not specifically mentioned, and as long as he's not worshipped, it's okay. In that case, they're allowed to have him as a partner. Do you understand? That's how,
exactly. Of course.
So this is not saying that Christians are not idolaters. They're misquoting Tosafis, and I see it as a trick, and I see it totally as a trickery and a lie. And let me show you something. Are you familiar with Rabbi Shlomo Riskin?
Sure, of course.
Okay. Well, he's one of those that is making friendships with Christians. And he's one of those who says, he was attacked, of course, by a lot of rabbis. He was attacked for it. But he's saying, he's bringing up 7 Noahide laws, and John Hagee is a main friend of Shlomo Riskin, okay? Who had to kind of give away? Was it Christians or Jews? It's John Hagee who says we are not to preach Jesus to Jews. Okay, John Hagee says
just John.
That the Jews already are in a covenant with the Father.
Rabbi Shapiro.
That they are in a covenant with the Father. That we are not to mention Jesus to Jews. And when Hagee was praying in Jerusalem and the embassy was moved there, he didn't even mention Jesus because it's prohibited. So it's always Christians that have to mend our ways and kind of, for the Jews. Now, if you think that I can trust them because they say Tosafis said this, well, I went and I read the Tosafis. I would never. How can you read Tosafis and say that he said that Christianity is not idolatry? They never said this. They just said it's only when Jews is making business dealings with Christians and when it comes to oath. Now I will read it to you from the Divine Code, and then you said that some rabbi's name that he contributed to Divine Code. That in the Divine Code it says Trinity is idolatry. Are you aware of it?
I'm going through the book. Yeah,
but you see,
I've got a lot to respond, so I'm just letting you finish.
Trinity is idolatry, and I want to play for you Shlomo Riskin.
Let's play the video,
because there is
and then give Dr. Brown a chance to respond.
Yeah, after that we'll give you a chance to respond. I'm sorry, but this Shlomo Riskin admitted that they're going to have agents, okay, who are going to be Chabad on the inside.
Let's let it be played.
Okay, now you can listen to
the actual video. All right. So 1 second here, I gotta figure out where that one's at. What? No, it's not there. Hang on. Not that one. Oh goodness. Maybe here.
No.
That's
no, that's not.
That's not it.
This is
it's not that one. Not that one. Oh, here we go, Riskin.
Yes.
This is where Riskin apologizes. That's not it.
So where is it?
Hang on. No, that's not it either. I think it's this one right here. Here we go. This is it.
symbolic, poetic terms, ad biat hagoel, until the coming of the Messiah. However, he said, you must produce shluchim, rabbis, messengers, agents, for the entire world, who are modern on the outside and Chabad on the inside. But that night, what he said was, Hashem yatzliach et rachecha, Hashem yatzliach et rachecha twice. I got to...
Takes me a second to get everything shuffled around, so...
Okay, so, in other words, there is a lot of things in Talmud also that they can basically lie to Christians for their own purposes. You know, I was very surprised, and I'm very sad to say, I have a family who are Jews, half of my family. And I don't believe all Jews are like that now.
No.
You have to understand, I only believe these are only the elites that have a grab of the Jewish people, and they keep them in that Jewishness, like Jewish values, Jewish life, Jewish, be a Jew, Talmudic values, okay? So this is why we want them out of that system, out of the authority of rabbis, and let's talk reality.
Well,
Okay.
it's more so you're dealing with the Christians that you don't want to get into
That's right, but the problem is that the Jews, especially these ecumenical Jews, they are going to do anything, and say anything, okay, to get the Christians, that they have a lot of money coming from Christians. Christians are supporting them with a lot of money in their organizations. They need them, okay. In some occasions, when we went to Chabad with Steve, they called them useful idiots, that they would talk to them nicely on the outside, but on the inside circle, they call them useful idiots, okay? But us being even among the Jews, and Chabad Jews specifically, we know that they do not look at Christians as innocent. They look at them as idolaters, just like Maimonides, the respected authority is claiming.
All right. Yeah. So there's a whole lot to respond to, and I just want to say with facts and only facts. So I'm just trying to think of where I want to start. Okay. I do not follow the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and if he thought every Christian on the planet was an idolater, so be it. And I have a book, a David Duke book on Jewish supremacy that starts with a quote from the Rebbe where it allegedly says that Christians or Gentiles have animal souls, and it's a very strong supremacist quote. So I've seen the quote, and Israel Shachak's book I got years and years ago. Of course, there's massive controversy over this by other scholars. So here's, I want to look at the big picture first. Any type scenario that you mention in the book of Revelation and the end time and the beast or the Antichrist, people are not going to be beheaded because they're not following the Noahide laws. They're going to be beheaded because they refuse to bow down to the Antichrist. He's going to impose idolatry that you have to worship him. I mean, look at what Paul writes here. Forget our speculation. Look at what Paul writes, 2 Thessalonians 2. Let no one deceive you in any way, for that day, speaking of the Lord's return, will not come unless the rebellion comes first, and the man of lawlessness, that's the Antichrist, is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. And in the book of Revelation, you can't buy or sell unless you worship him. So people will be beheaded because they refuse to worship the Antichrist, not because they are Christians who won't listen to the Noahide laws. That's going to be the last issue whatsoever. It's going to be the Antichrist demanding that everyone worships him. That's what Scripture says. That's the first thing. The second thing, when it comes to Rabbi Schneerson, I look up the exact source that I referenced if you want the details. Likutei Sichot, volume 25, page 192, note 56, where halakhic sources are provided saying that Christianity is not idolatry. Also, when the Supreme Court took prayer out of schools, the Rebbe issued a statement saying that this was wrong, that these children should be able to pray to God, and he pointed back to the principle of religious freedom in America and Christian principles, saying that these Christians were praying to God. So those are prayer statements. But even if that was all lies, even if it was all duplicitous, even if everything was made up, even if every rabbi on the planet believed Christianity was idolatry, it doesn't change a syllable of what I'm saying. There is no scenario in which suddenly everyone says, oh, now the Christians get beheaded because the Jews are in control. There is not going to be a scenario where the Jews are ruling the world, ruling the Muslim world, ruling the nations like China, or ruling Russia, and everyone says, oh, if the Jews say so, we just have to submit to it and start beheading 1/3 of the earth's population. Here's what a Chabad rabbi wrote to me. We were interacting about this, and he was shocked. He says, what's all this Noahide? Everyone's talking about Noahide laws. I said, yeah, I've been hearing about this a lot. Now, they do try to spread them. Yeah, of course. I understand that. So listen to what he wrote. The whole question about capital punishment and animal sacrifices being reinstated in the Messianic era is confronting for Westerns. The same concern that Christians have about being killed for idolatry would be a concern for the Jews who desecrate Shabbos. This is a Chabad rabbi. The bottom line is that until the coming of Elijah, no one will be trying any capital cases, not of Jews and not of non-Jews. I'm quite sure that when Elijah really shows up and the Messiah comes, everyone who truly loves God will submit to their judgment and rulings. So obviously you could say they're setting themselves up for a false Messiah and so on. Could well be. Bottom line is, his understanding is, until you're in the Messianic era, you're not going to be having a death penalty to enforce. So I still haven't heard anything that explains how you get from where we are to the day when Christians are beheaded for idolatry. And then just, again, a few more things to respond to. There are plenty of academic sources, like I mentioned here, thoroughly annotated, that will say for centuries now, since the Middle Ages, the majority Jewish view, not just the modern ecumenical one, is that Christianity is not idolatrous for Gentiles. One of the rabbis you just cited talked about this large movement among Jews to feel this way. So it's not just some ecumenical rabbis. So that is what I understand to be the academic position among the majority of rabbis worldwide. If I put on a video with 50 or 100 or 1,000 rabbis giving my position, it doesn't make my side true and your side false any more than you putting on Toby Singh or others makes my position false. As for Rabbi Riskin, I actually know some Christians that have dialogued with him, and as plainly as could possibly be done, shared Jesus in meetings with him, made plain what their views are. I have strong issues with Kufi, John Hagee's organization, not being committed to evangelizing Jewish people. I strongly differ. He and I have had very frank conversations about those issues. I appreciate him supporting Israel, but absolutely stand against any type of two-covenant theology or any notion that a Jew can be saved outside of Jesus. I find that terribly dangerous, and I warn people that you have to be careful on the doctrinal end with Kufi for that very reason. Lastly, as far as the Rebbe is concerned, I have a book coming out in March called Resurrection, investigating a rabbi from Brooklyn, a preacher from Galilee, and the event that changed the world, where I contrast the failed hopes that the Rebbe would rise and reveal himself as Messiah. Contrast that with the real Messiah, Jesus, who did rise, and go through all the sources. So I want to reach Chabad people with the gospel of Jesus. Just like you, I want to see them saved, and I believe that God's going to do something and bring them to conviction, and that many will turn. That's my hope. That's my prayer. But I want to come right back to the whole thing. Even if you were right, and let's say every rabbi on the planet actually believed that, or every Orthodox rabbi on the planet, that Christianity was idolatry. Again, we differ there. But even if you were right, how are we going to get to the point where suddenly the people that were working in an ecumenical way are told, really, we were lying to you, or we were all compromisers. What we really believe is Christianity is idolatry, so start beheading. Where are the Jewish people going to have that kind of authority worldwide, especially with all the Jew hatred in the world and enough pushback about Jewish influence and Jewish control in society? I see no plausible scenario except for an Antichrist type thing where there's world deception and people welcome him as a false Messiah, but then he's not going to enforce Noahide laws. He's going to say, you have to worship me which will be idolatry, and Christians and others will die rather than worship him. So that's really my big rub. In other words, even if on the legal issues and Shituf and all that, you were right. I don't agree with you. But even if you were, in terms of the majority view and all of this, and Hameiri, the one called Meiri, was pretty famous rabbi, and his Talmud commentary is revered to this day. But even putting all that aside, if your view was right, I still see no actual danger where these things become the law of the land and Christians are beheaded by the rabbis for not following these laws. That's my big rub. Not the other things. Not is Christianity idolatry, not according to the rabbi, not the meaning of Shituf and all that. That's not my big argument. And I don't even think we'd be having this discussion if not for my response to a caller. And I didn't know what you taught. I'm sad to say that I didn't know you folks before this, but a caller called and said, is it true that Christians are going to be beheaded under the Noahide laws? And I said, there's more chance of Santa Claus coming down your chimney, which then seemed like a slap in your face after all the research you've done. I didn't know of your existence. I don't know if you knew of my existence before that. But that, to me, remains the big rub. And I still don't see any potential scenario for that, in particular in an Antichrist scenario where people will be beheaded for not worshiping him, as opposed to not worshiping the one God.
Okay. Especially Chabad.org. On many of their sites, when you start searching Chabad.org and you start searching Noahide laws, they are specifically citing that the Messiah that's coming will enforce Noahide laws upon all humanity. Okay, so it's according to their sources that the Messiah will supposedly enforce Noahide laws. Now, you mentioned Daniel, and you are correct in this, but also in the book of Revelation 24, it says, I saw thrones on which were seated those who had been given authority to judge, and I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded because of their testimony about Jesus and because of the word of God. Now, it says that they had not worshipped the beast or its image, so the beheaded ones were not worshipping. And they were beheaded, so Antichrist will be beheading them for their testimony of Jesus. I mean, according to John, that was his vision, okay? So the problem is that Chabad.org cites one source after another when they're explaining who the Messiah will be. They're saying he's going to enforce Noahide laws upon all, and then of course we have rabbis in United Nations saying the same thing, that this is the only way how peace in this world can come, how the whole world can come together in the name of global peace and security specifically. Okay, so when you see they're all afraid of Sharia law, saying that, it's the Muslims who are beheading, and it's true. They do have in their Sharia law beheading of Christians. However, are you aware of the fact that a lot of the same rabbis who are preaching, this ecumenism, they are meeting with Islamic scholars, and they're agreeing on the fact that Sharia law is Noahide law. It's Sharia law, that under Noahide law, they can be, running their Sharia law. So, I didn't prepare for this particular thing, but I have sources on that as well, because I'm watching what they're doing with Muslims as well. In fact, of course, they're saying, including Yehuda Glick, he's saying he was meeting with the Islamic scholars, and he was saying that Allah is the same God as God of Israel, that they have the same God. Of course, I disagree that Allah is not same God as a Christian God or my God, for sure. So if that's what the rabbis say, that Allah is their God, then unfortunately I have to say they serve Satan. Okay? So it is according to their own sources, their own preaching, their own proselyting, where they say that their Messiah, which will be the Antichrist, will be beheading Christians. So,
anyway, right. So if we just focus on this then, and it seemed that Adam's not here, but I think I understood him correctly. Now, he wasn't talking religiously as much, taking a more neutral position in that regard. But as I understood, it's the same scenario, that it will be during the reign of the Antichrist, and I don't believe in a pre-trib rapture, wrote a book with Craig Keener about that, Not Afraid of the Antichrist. Well, we don't believe in a pre-trib rapture. So I believe we'll all be here. So it is an issue to discuss what happens during the reign of the Antichrist. But that's the only potential scenario in which this could happen. So first, whether something's on the law books in the States or whether the Vatican agreed, you could say it's preparation for that. But bottom line, outside of an Antichrist setting, there's nothing like this going to happen around the world.
Brown, I agree with you. Okay.
Okay.
What I am saying, and what we are saying and warning Christians, because Christians don't have the knowledge and had no knowledge that Noahide laws exist. They didn't know it's been resigned here. That was a surprise to them. What a bomb. You understand? Because they all are taught by the specific design of Judaizing Christianity, okay, that Jews only believe in the Old Testament. They have innocent religion and they're blind for our sake, and that's all they believe, that they're just blind brothers and we have the common roots. Well, we have a common roots with a remnant from the Bible, remnant that saw the promised seed and beheld him even before he was born. But I don't believe that we as Christians have any common root with Talmudic Judaism. I don't believe that.
I need to get this thought in here because we'll end up running out of time and I'll never have said anything.
Sorry.
All right. I agree with you completely, Dr. Brown, as far as it being an Antichrist system. Now, the thing is, in my past, I spent 7 years in the CIA. I never spoke about that until recently because of a whole lot of other issues that are going on. And I still have not come out publicly about the things that I know. But I worked during the times of the Iran-Contra affair, Nicaragua, those type things there that went on. Now, when we look at the Antichrist, and of course I used to really have a completely different view. I used to think more along the lines of the Vatican, etc. I've had a lot of view changes here in the last couple of years. Because I was also a Zionist and very much involved in the Chabad organization for nearly 20 years. A lot of these people are my friends, and a little different than the friends that you have and the things that they've shared with you with the ones that I have been involved with. I was asked to help bridge the gap between Christians and the Orthodox Chabad organization throughout Florida because I knew so many of the Chabad rabbis here. I also had good friends in the Reform as well, and the Orthodox that is not Chabad, but I have most of my contact with Chabad. I know full well exactly what they all think of the Gentiles, and many times those things would be expressed. But going on point here about the Antichrist and not seeing something that's being bridged, I have been watching because of my own time in intelligence services there. And I still have a lot of colleagues. I have a lot of friends around the world. I have friends with the Mossad. I have friends with other agencies that I have contacts with. But a lot of these things we can look at without even having to go into those realms there to see what's going on. We can look at recently when Michelle Bachmann, one of the representatives from the United States there, was in the Netherlands pushing for moving the Hague to Jerusalem to basically put the International Court underneath the Sanhedrin. Now, there we could argue all kinds of things about the Sanhedrin. They don't have much power now, etc. But the thing is, we're starting to see that momentum. I know doing Israeli News Live, when I really came against the relationship that Israel was developing with China and the Silk Road Initiative, and how that this is playing out, and the two ports that the Chinese were building in Israel, the first one there in Haifa, where there was no one that bid on it except the Chinese. The second one that they begin to do it. They finally let it go out to the public. A few other nations did, but again, China got it. I had Mossad agent contact me and tell me, somebody I knew, and he said, you got to keep your mouth shut about China. He said, China is going to be the next world power, and they will replace the United States. Your country, Steve, you're going to see it, and it's going to happen. He said, you'll see it when Iran goes down. It won't be long after that. The United States will also take a major hit. He said, the U.S.'s days are coming down, and you need to quit speaking such bad things about China and say good things about China because they're the ones we're partnering with. Now, back in the 90s, as you would know, we began to move all of our infrastructure of our major corporations and stuff moved to China. I had friends, and I won't call their names, I had friends that moved their manufacturing over there. I used to be engineer. I did a lot of development work. I had one friend who wanted to build some of the things that I built over in China because it was cheaper. And I said, why would we build it in China? Either build it in Israel, build it in America. I don't want to build it any other place, right? But the whole point was there has been a systematic movement of moving out our infrastructure here in the United States, making China great again, and not making the United States great again. I have seen with all this, you also have Russia. You know, there are rabbis that go into details about how the Mossad worked within Russia, the overtaking of Russia. The Chabad organization was very prominent in Russia. Even as Rabbi Lazer, he is basically the right-hand man for Putin. I've got sitting in my office here almost 300 documents of organized crime between the Russians, people here in the United States, businessmen, etc., of the connections that they're making, and they're orchestrating a major move in bringing about a new world order. And at the end of the day, what they want is, I've been told by some of these people in these circles here, I've got contacts in the Pentagon, I've got one man that sits right there with President Trump, but the world will never know who it is, but he sits there and he tells me what goes on. You know, but the thing is, they're wanting to bring about a new world order. And I know that everybody says, oh, that's just, you know, that's a conspiracy theory. But at the end of the day, Jerusalem will be the headquarters of where that'll be. Now, that doesn't mean the Jewish people are bad by no means. I mean, these are our people. We love them. But what happens, a lot of our own people, Dr. Brown, have no clue what's going on in these elite circles. And in fact, it is the Orthodox community that has a very powerful grip. And I hate to say that, because there's a lot of good Orthodox Jewish people that also have no clue as to what's going on in the backgrounds. But they have a power grip on the Israeli government. And I know completely, too, from the intelligence that I get out of there, that the whole purpose of these wars that are going on in the Middle East is to make way, make room, because once they bring the United States down, they want to do that to force the Jews that are in America to have to come back to Israel. And therefore, then they will have to be underneath underneath the Levitical law. As Jews, we would be required to be under Levitical law. If we're, you know, there's so many things that are happening, and I am seeing the infrastructure coming together. So the possibility of a Jewish Antichrist coming on the scene is very much real. And as you probably know already yourself, in Judaism, they believe in two messiahs. You have Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. And of course, according to Rabbi Laitman, that would be, they believe in what they call a holy serpent Messiah. And when he does come on the scene, as many rabbis say in the Chabad organization, they will enforce the Noahide laws upon the Gentiles. So the Mashiach ben Yosef is supposed to be the warrior type, and he's going to die, which different issue on that. To me, Yeshua, that was the type of that. They get that from Daniel, as you probably know. They know that he has to die, but they got to figure out a way to make this work. So, but Mashiach ben David, when he comes on, he will rule and reign as the Messiah to bring about a peace. And I really believe, Dr. Brown, we're seeing a false millennial reign being put into order, a false world order being placed in order to bring the nations down, to make it look like they brought world peace. And then at the same time, when they do it, this alleged Messiah, which to me, we know the only one that comes back is Yeshua. And when he comes back, he's coming back to wipe off everything. Is what he's not coming back to be for a picnic, for a beam me up Scotty showdown. He's coming back to bring judgment because of what's happened. And so this is what concerns me, and especially for the sake of our own people, as far as when I say our own people, our Jewish brothers and sisters, we have got to win them to Christ more than ever is now, because I see this movement. And Rabbi Shapira, also, what's the other guy's name? Yeah, Mark Biltz and stuff. They're doing such a major movement in South America, telling all of our Jewish brothers and sisters that have believed Yeshua for centuries now. I mean, my father was a Sephardic Jew, you know. So, but they're telling them that they've got to repent and come underneath the rabbis. And they say, we don't care if the rabbis are wrong. You got to go back under the rabbis. So my last statement in this is, I have to say, even in the case of Yitzhak Shapiro, what he's doing, putting believers that are already believers in Christ, to put them underneath Talmudic rabbis, when if we go back 2,000 years ago, and it's not to say that all the Pharisees were bad, but clearly We know what Yeshua said about the Pharisees. He called them serpents. He said your father is the devil, but it didn't mean that every Pharisee was. The Qumranites from down by the Dead Sea, they considered them to be the sons of darkness. A different issue altogether, but nonetheless, if we were 2,000 years ago, we saw the Orthodox community and the Roman government working together, and they were working together against the believers of Jesus Christ. And I see the same thing repeating today. And I know you have felt the force of this as well in Israel. As I listened to you on Adam's show, you spoke about how you got arrested for witnessing Jesus Christ in the streets of Jerusalem. I've got many, many Christian friends there that have told us about the persecution. Some of them are afraid to even say it publicly because they'll be thrown out of the nation. They'll take away their citizenship. The threats like this, I've got friends that are dragged into court by the Orthodox community because they're believers, etc., etc. And the thing is, this is where I see this is where they're pushing this for. They're trying to bring about a false millennial reign. And so therefore, we will consider that to be the Antichrist, but according to every Orthodox Jew that I know, they've always said they will enforce the Noahide laws. That's what the Messiah will do. So I agree with you. We are looking, even if it's 10, 15, 20 years from now, these things, or it could be next year for all we know. I don't know. I still see it takes a little bit of time for them to pull it all off. But what I've been told from intelligence people, they've got to bring the nationalism down. They've got to destroy nationalism in order to bring this about and to make their Messiah look like the Savior.
Got it. I appreciate that. So let me share where I agree with you, and then where I'd have a different perspective. First, as far as deep state, Mossad, intelligence, I'm 100% unconnected with all of that. So you're way further in on all those things than I am. Contrary to the ridiculous internet accusations, let's see, I work for Chabad. I'm a secret Mossad agent. I had a slew of people accusing me of being a Mason after Adam and I joked about that. People even claimed that I was using a secret, I was closing one eye, a secret Luciferian signal. So putting all that ridiculous, idiotic nonsense aside, which does concern me, that the moment I dispute Noahide laws or any of this stuff, these wackos come out of the woodwork, flooding my YouTube channel with every kind of vile, ridiculous comment, many claiming to be Christian. I'm thinking, why is it when I touch this that I get the weirdest, wackiest, most absurd things said? People who believe almost anything under the sun, utterly irrational. But all that to say, if there's intelligence you have, I'm not disputing it. I'm just not aware of it. So I'm not disputing that in terms of your sources or anything. I was never in the CIA and all of that. I have a couple of Christian friends that have good relationships with the president or others in the White House, but I'm no insider. All right, so you could be right on the intelligence in Israel and China. Could well be. Honestly, I don't know. You've looked at that far more than I have. I want to say categorically, I agree with you that it is very dangerous to tell Jewish believers in Jesus that they need to submit to the authority of the rabbis. That is absolutely a step towards apostasy. It's dangerous. I categorically reject it. As you know, and I've referenced this often, Volume 5 in my series, Answering Jewish Objections to Jesus, is specifically written to refute Talmudic Judaism and to say why we do not accept Talmudic authority. So I am step for step with you, inch for inch, with the same perspective. It's not a total damnation of all of our people or saying that every Orthodox rabbi is this evil, plotting, conspiratorial person, but it is to say that we 100% reject the claims that there's an unbroken chain of tradition from Moses to the traditional rabbis. So I'm with you on that, and I am 100% with you that it is urgent that we win as many of our people as possible to Jesus the Messiah, that it's urgent, and that it's a priority. To the Jew first remains a priority. Every Christian on the planet should be praying for the salvation of Jews. The very best loving thing you can do for a Jewish person is share the message of Jesus Christ with them. So I am completely with you on that as well. As for Israel and China, don't know what's coming with the relationship there, but China's definitely a threat. China's very dangerous. And I don't see China getting behind Noahide laws, by the way, with their atheism and their persecuting of Muslims and Christians. But China is a very real threat. We have friends that have lived in China for many years, and they've talked about the rising power there. And I've written articles about the persecution of Christians there and how bad things are getting. China is a real world threat. Sharia law is a real issue. And a massive difference between Sharia law and Noahide law is that Sharia law is enforced in countries around the world like Afghanistan or Saudi Arabia. And it has been enforced, whereas enforcing of Noahide laws remains a future theory of something that would happen in the Messianic era. So I say let's look at the present danger of China and its rising power and radical Islam and the actual beheading of Christians now. As for the authority of the rabbis, I mean, let's understand still that even though ultra-Orthodox Judaism is growing rapidly in numbers, that worldwide it still represents maybe 10% of the Jewish population, and the rabbis, they hardly have authority over Israel as a whole. I mean, they do in certain ways, and they're trying to take more. But with so many Israelis secular and not wanting to follow Torah at all, you know there's going to be pushback. So again, where we agree is the only way this could happen, your scenario of Jewish world power would be with a Jewish Antichrist. And I don't know if the Antichrist will be a Jew. Joe Rosenberg and others have made cases for an Islamic Antichrist. There's the old view of the European Antichrist. I honestly don't know. I'm sure that many people have more insight on that subject than I do. I don't claim to have mastered what Scripture says about it or know that we can be sure. But is it possible that the Antichrist will be a Jewish leader, the false Messiah? Yes, I definitely see that as possible. I see an easy scenario for it. And with the rebuilding of the temple, if there was some prominent Jewish leader and then bringing people together with some type of pseudo-world peace, I could easily see it happen. But what I do know in Scripture is that rather than him enforcing the Noahide laws, he's going to call for worship of himself. He's going to set himself up in the temple of God and proclaim himself to be God. Maybe that's when the Jewish nation wakes up and says, oh my God, what have we done? Which leads to the beginning of a repentance and a turning that I believe Paul speaks of in Romans 11. But what we also know in Revelation 13 is that people will not be able to buy or sell without submitting to the authority of this Antichrist, and that includes worshiping him, worshiping his image. So that to me is the rub. And that to me, again, is Noahide laws are not the issue. I know for you, this is how the whole thing can come together and have this structure. But for me, it's not the issue. The issue is a world system that is going to turn us away from the worship of Jesus and call us to bow down to this idolatrous world leader. Perhaps we can agree on this. What we must do is be absolutely vigilant in our devotion to Jesus, in our unashamed proclamation of Jesus, and our confession that he is Lord, that he is eternal deity, that we refuse to back down from that, and that every one of us makes a fresh commitment by life or by death, as many of our friends and colleagues have to already. Some of my dear friends have to live like this all the time. That we say again, no matter what, no matter who tries to turn us away, here's where our loyalty is, and we bow down to no one else than the one true God. And when we say that, we say Jesus is Lord in the midst of it. So I know ultimately on those things we agree, and I think at least for those that follow us, we've done a decent job of explaining why we're having this clash over the Noahide law thing. But if your show to end, but the last thing I want to say is, by all means, let us renew our devotion to Jesus. And to me, the danger is, and this is why I get concerned, you know all of the conspiracies about the Jews through history and the blood libels and the desecrating of the host and the various things, because of which many of our people have been killed. When I was talking to Jonathan Bernis, he was saying the Ethiopian Jews, the Falashas, they're accused of turning into hyenas and sucking people's blood. So you have the blood libel in this African version there. My concern is what I see happen the moment there's talking about Noahide laws, not from what you've said today, not from the way you've presented things, not from your tone, any of that, but as it trickles down, what I hear now is this irrational fear of Jewish power, the new conspiracy, protocols of the elders of Zion, and the Jews are going to take over the world and start beheading Christians. And now you start looking at your average Jew as, are you plotting to do that? That's what concerns me, and that it stirs up anti-Semitism. Not a discussion of where things are going or eschatology or dangers or a rabbinic agenda. That's not the concern. The concern to me is what it stirs up, and that's why I've raised my voice. But in any case, thank you for interacting and giving me the opportunity to share with your viewers.
Okay, Dr. Brown, just real quick, because you spoke so much and I had these answers, and it's like it goes so fast. So I want to respond to a few of the things. When you said that only 10% of population are Orthodox Jews, okay, it's not about the numbers, because we know who rules the world today. It's really 1% of population. It's 1% here on the very, very top, and they make all the decisions. So it's not about that. It's what we see is preparing of infrastructure for the Jewish Antichrist. It's from their own sources every time. It's from all Jewish books, Jewish sources. It's from Talmud, Zohar, Kabbalah. It's from Judaism itself. It's them who say that they will enforce Noahide laws. It's not Jana and Steve saying that. We are just quoting them, their websites. I actually have few prepared and I have not even shown them to you because of time issue, but I can. And also, in the very beginning, when you said that those who claim the idea of Shituv, that these are just ecumenical rabbis who don't believe that Trinitarian Christians are idolaters or Christians are idolaters, well, they print books. And I think you're very wrong on that. You have to, in one way, they will tell you Christians are not idolaters. They're going to go to Tosefos and they go to Mary. But then they will print books. And these books are promoted by Israel 365. And these books were promoted as good read for Christians. And as I'm reading these books, because I ordered them to see what they have to say, and the entire book by Rabbi Ginsburg is Kabbalah and Meditation for Nations. I thought he's going to discuss Kabbalah, which he does, but interestingly, he discusses it all in connection to Noahide laws. And let me just say, these are the promoters of Noahide laws. They are disseminating these books. And he says here on page 42, he says, like on Miri 2, the non-Jewish attempt to parody this ultimate secret of three, which are one, totally destroys the authenticity of the paradox of the concept. Indeed, the belief in a Trinity is nothing short of idolatry as defined by the Torah. And he's citing Torah, Talmud actually. And I'm ready to discuss with you entire book of Ginsburg right here, because I'm writing a thesis on it. And I need to bring to attention of Christians, this is a highly dangerous supremacist book. In this book, he is actually saying that non-Jews do not have divine spark as Jews do, so they're on a lower level of humanity. And the only way for them to survive the world to come will be to attach themselves to the Jewish people and serve them. So this is a very supremacist book that I don't know what would happen if we as Christians were printing books saying that Jewish people are less of humans than the Gentiles are. That would be total outcry. They already have...
It's anti-Gentile.
I mean,
if I could just jump in, though.
Sure.
Yitzhak Ginsburg's writings are deplored by many rabbis and spoken against. Yes, I've read his stuff,
sure.
and it's scary.
No,
but there are many that categorically reject it. The other thing is, the church through the centuries has said all kinds of horrific things about Jewish people and demonized Jewish people. And so the sword cuts both ways. But to me, the biggest illustration, I just took a second now for the first time and started looking in the chat. The type of ugly accusations that come against me, the lies, the junk, this comes up when here. And again, every statement I've made, I can support with sources, with documentation. As you can, I do my homework as well.
Yeah.
And if this aired on my channel, right, folks would be differing with you, and some would say these people are way out, but you'd get a lot of discussion of the issues. As I watched this, the same thing happened with Adam, and Adam said, I can't judge him by his followers. I'm saying there's something funny here when I respond rationally, clearly, and you just see some of this, he's a sneaky, sneaky snake, and he follows the protocols and all this. It's the same garbage. Yeah. I'm wondering, why does it keep coming up? Why do people become so irrational. The Mason stuff, all this. That's what I wonder about. So my concern is, yes, quote Yitzhak Ginsburg as a rabbi, then quote all the rabbis that say we categorically reject his views as fringe and extreme and dangerous. Okay, just be fair, rather than giving people the impression that this is this mainstream view and so on. And look, I've done this study for decades. I'll come with my own stacks of books, and we'll go to my office with the rabbinic library. We'll pull out the volumes. I'm happy to go toe to toe on all of that. I still think you have to ask yourself, why does so much stuff get stirred up that is so ugly, that is so base, that believes every kind of lie? The moment I just push back and differ, and again, you've been utterly respectful, and hopefully I have towards you as well. That's what concerns me. It's a picture that's being painted that then presents this view of the Jews and what the Jews are going to do that ties in with the protocols and the other world conspiratorial things. That again is my issue in terms of what's being stirred up today.
Right.
And I think it's only fair when you mention Ginsburg at such length that people understand how much his views are considered controversial, even in the ultra-Orthodox community.
One thing, Dr. Brown, I will say as far as the people that make the comments, Israeli News Live, because we are a news program, we have a teaching program where you would probably be received much differently. But we have Muslims, we have Hindus, we have Christians, we have every walk you can possibly imagine that watches this program.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we
fair
do
enough.
get the
Enough
different
said.
ones. So.
Fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, don't take this personally. We get attacked very ugly ways.
Oh, we got beat up too before we got it in our emails when you were coming on. That,
just for having me.
No,
by the way, I get
they were
attacked
commenting the other way
24/7
around.
because I'm always tackling controversies as you do. I'm only saying that the moment I address these things, it's a certain type of person comes out of the woodwork that believes every crazy thing under the sun, and when you challenge it, when I say I don't even know any Masons, you can tell the guy's lying. It's like, what do you do? How do you deal with that? Because I know, Jana, and I've called you Jana, my apologies, but I know, Jana, that you're digging, you're looking at sources, you're looking at documents. I love the fact that you're looking at this seriously and are doing serious research. I don't deny that for a split second. So that's that. My question is, what gets stirred up?
Okay.
And I know you got a great following on internet. So
the reason
whatever.
The reason I do what I do is for the love of Christian people, but love of Jewish people, because I know the true Jewish soul is not like this. I know that most Jews don't feel these things as we are bringing them out, and I want to expose the darkness within the Jews, that it's kind of taking these innocent Jewish people, because they're also having a grip over them, and try to put these Jewish people, they are secular. Let's face it, they don't like authority of rabbis, but they want to bring them under that authority. Right. Telling them, be a good Jew and you must come. That's the basically purpose of Chabad, as Chabad is actually saying that our purpose is not only to impose Noahide laws on Gentiles and bring the world peace and bring the Messiah quickly, okay, but their purpose is also to bring all the Jews under the 613 mitzvot.
Yes,
so
especially so.
Exactly.
This is something that I don't want to be happening, so I want to wake up the Jewish people that they are ruled by totally wrong ideas.
They would make us divorced because I'm Jewish by both parents.
Right.
And we have a brother in Israel right now that the Israelis forced his wife to leave the country because she was a Gentile.
Right.
Yeah, and listen, I absolutely am concerned about the rise of ultra-Orthodox power and authority in Israel. And even with the Netanyahu government, and as much as I appreciate certain things he's done, I don't like his right-wing alliance. And we know that if the ultra-Orthodox have a coalition, that they get the Ministry of Interior. And, I don't have the idea of me becoming a citizen in Israel is completely impossible, barring divine intervention, because I'm a known Messianic Jew. Yeah. And we know there would be an attempt to kick out believers.
It's already
I do believe that there are fanatics among the ultra-Orthodox that would physically attack and persecute Jewish believers and would think anything they could do to them would be serving God. So I share that concern with you, absolutely.
Okay, but let's go back to, like, for example, when I was telling you about, and you say that there are people who are against him. I have not seen that yet. In fact, the Israel 365, which is in a major cooperation between Jews and Christians, they promoted this book as a good read for Christians. So that concerns me. Now, I am very sorry that this information is bringing these really true anti-Semites out with ugly thoughts like that about every Jew and putting all the Jews in one bag. I'm really sorry. But at the same time, this is what this man has done to the Jews. I think he's hurting Jews by writing books like this. When he says that Gentile souls are not fully human, you know, this is basically a supremacist idea, something that we would say Hitler thought of Jews. So why is he doing stuff like that, right? So he's got to be exposed. But anyway, he's one of the proselyting Jews for Noahide laws, and he says Trinity and Christianity is absolute idolatry. So you can see not all of these proselyting Jews for Noahide laws are the ones on saying that Shituf is basically okay. It's okay to worship Christ. I don't even believe, and I don't agree with you, most respectfully, Dr. Brown, I don't agree with you that that they actually say that you can worship Jesus. They say you can believe that way, but you cannot actually show it by worship. Now that's what's portrayed in book of the Divine Code, okay? He says it right here. He says, this is the belief in an intermediary that, as Tosafot writes, it is not prohibited to Gentiles, meaning to believe and swear in both God's name and another name. So it's for swearing in, okay? Now, however, it is not permitted for a Gentile to perform active service out of worship, meaning of Jesus. Okay, so this is the official of the Noahide laws, no active worship of Jesus Christ. And he says it over. I have all of the pages written down, and he ends it with something, basically he's saying that in the world to come, there will be no such thing as Shituf anyway, okay, because all of the people under Noahide laws will submit to one God, as Jewish rabbis are having mitzvot to teach them.
Noahide laws are being enforced in the Philippines. That is something that has started over there.
And also they're enforced in Israel, because a lot of Palestinian workers
are now having to sign documents.
You know, they have to sign
just saying, we have about 50 men, women, and children that are part of our ministry organization that serve as missionaries in the Philippines, which is, I think, one of the most Catholic countries in the world. You're not saying that currently, if you are a Christian in the Philippines, that the government is going to behead you. You're not saying that, correct?
No.
Oh, okay. And by the way, Yitzhak Ginsburg, just if you go to Wikipedia, it will list all of his controversies. For example, when Baruch Goldstein massacred the 29 Muslims at the Cave of the Patriarchs, he referred to the massacre as a mitzvah. He's been arrested, put in administrative detention for his speeches against Arabs. In 1996, 2003, he was indicted of charges of encouraging racism against Arabs. 2010, the Israeli newspaper called him a well-known radical on his views on Israel-Arab public. 2014, he called price tags acts of vandalism unsupervised acts, and on and on. So just to say that he is, in Israel and beyond, considered by many to be a radical and an extremist with dangerous views. I just want to balance that out. But we agree
with
that there are...
But this is why.
Anyway.
This is why, Dr. Brown, isn't it surprising Israel 365 recommends him as
of course.
Right,
there's a lot of superficial. Look, when we bring people over to Israel every year to connect to the land and history and look at what's happened in the Bible in the past and what's going to happen in the future, you know, it's an overwhelming, it's a glorious experience. It's life changing. But I always tell people, don't just get some superficial sentimentals like, oh, Israel, and, oh, the Jewish people. I said, look, when you're praying at the wall, you should have a broken heart for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, rather than, oh, it's just the Jewish. So the fascination with Jewish things and with, oh, the rabbi with the long beard must make the person holy. Yeah, we've got to see through that and see these as souls who sin like everyone else and need Jesus. And yes, where there is extremist writing, that's where we have to be careful, because we don't want to stir up a broader anti-Semitism, but we do want to expose ugly agendas. We do want to expose things that, extremist statements that some of the Orthodox rabbis make. Yeah, I stand with you in opposing them and exposing them. Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Grant, as far as anti-Semitism goes, okay, I am sure that there is a true anti-Semitism, that there are people who hate the Jews just because they're Jews. That's a problem. But I believe that there's anti-Gentilism as well, especially, there's anti-Gentilism when it comes to some Jewish radical people.
I agree.
They really hate the Gentiles. They publish books against them. They say
It's
they're
like
not
radical
fully
Gentiles.
human. So
Yeah.
I think that it goes both ways, and I think that Jewish people are set up pretty much. They have ADL, they have APAC, they have organizations that put you on a list when you speak negatively about Judaism, not because of race. They changed the anti-Semitism definition, so you cannot even criticize the religion of Judaism at all. So we are every day in danger of us being shut down, because we will inform the world about the facts as they come, even when
on both
sides, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and I think this is not only anti-Semitism is a problem, we have anti-Gentilism that is a growing problem, yet we have no organizations ever watching out for Gentiles against radical Jews, and they're allowed to print books like, but this is a hateful supremacist book by Ginsburg, printed and given to Christian audience as a recommendation by Israel 365 organization. Okay, but anti-Semitism sometimes can be taken way too far. It's used as a trick, and I don't know if you are aware of like one video of actual Knesset member, ex-Knesset member, who explains that anti-Semitism can be a trick, that Jewish people use. Are you aware of that?
Oh yeah. I've looked at the clip. But for sure, there is the silencing of any criticism of Jewish people at all, and people play the anti-Semitism card. Just like with very real issues of racism in America, some people play the race card. And we have to be very careful about it. It's not anti-Semitic to criticize Jewish people. It's not anti-Semitic to criticize the nation of Israel. It is anti-Semitic to spread lies about a people, or to demonize a people, or delegitimize a people. That's the issue. But here's the real irony with all of this. So a lot of my videos get demonetized on YouTube. We've got a couple thousand on the Ask Dr. Brown site or YouTube channel. But a lot of them get demonetized because we deal with controversial gay, lesbian issues and things like that from a biblical perspective. But what's so fascinating is when I was on with Adam, I made clear that I believe he has every right to be on YouTube and share what he does, even if I differ with a lot of the content, and that I oppose trying to shut that voice down. And ironically, the video that I did on his show is on his channel, which is very strongly anti-Zionist, as he would say, is on his channel without a problem. We then put it on our channel, and my producer used a title like Jewish World Conspiracy, Noahide Laws Debate, something like that. Well, we got it removed from our channel, and I got a strike. So here I was the one taking the other position, and we got the strike. So we're under YouTube discipline right now. We can't live stream for another few days, and so on. But I see the sense. I understand if you look at, say, the ACLU, that is a large segment of that, and key segment on the wrong liberal causes, liberal Jews, the George Soroses of the world, the ADL, the Southern Poverty Law Center, a lot of Jewish leadership there. So liberal Jews, radical leftist Jews are having a very negative impact on our society, along with radical leftist Gentiles. And we have to be able to say that plainly in our society without being branded anti-Semitic. That's not anti-Semitic to bring a valid criticism against a specific group of people. But yeah, I think in many ways, as we talk, that there's a lot that we share in terms of concern, in terms of perspective, and in terms of overall burden. And it's good to know that in terms of who you are and what you're doing. And we can continue to dialogue on the other things, but I just want to reinforce where we do agree.
Because of the time. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Steve.
Let me
I'm
just
so
quickly,
sorry.
let me
Go
just
ahead.
a couple of things real quick. You know, Dr. Brown, and I did hear what you said on Adam's show about standing for freedom of speech, because in the state of Florida, for example, the governor, not only did he pass the law here in the state of Florida that in public schools, they cannot speak anything against the state of Israel. They have basically taken away the freedom of speech. They cannot be involved in the boycott movement, the BDS movement. They can't say anything about this, which I'm not for boycotting Israel. Even though I may disagree with policies, I've never been for boycotting Israel. I don't think we need to keep sending more weapons. I think Israel's got enough on that as far as that goes, but that's a different story altogether because I won't even get into that. But at this point, my biggest concern, though, is that what a lot of people didn't pay attention to, though, is that the very people that opposed this law here in the state of Florida were all Jews. It was Jewish lawyers that, and two Jewish rabbis, both Reformed, that came against the law. There was no Gentiles that stood up for it whatsoever, which was a shame. But there again, what is it? It's our own people that are willing to say, this is not right, and it's got to be changed. You know, but the thing is, it's just like in the case of the Noahide laws. It's in a ceremonial law, but it's still under education. And that's what we see. It's almost as if what they're wanting to do, and I say they, sometimes I question, Dr. Brown, if the people behind this are really true Jewish people that are in this higher ranking echelon, you might call it there. I think that there are some people that are only masquerading as Jews. Just like in the case of the Vatican, they got people that are not necessarily really Catholics, you know. So this is my biggest concern. But one thing I did want to mention too as well for you, and maybe you're aware of this. This is not the one. Sorry, give me 1 second. Because this is in one of, because I know I didn't get much chance to speak to you today, and we are running out of time. But one of the things that I've seen with, like in the case of Yitzhak Shapira, is that, let me see if I even have it up here, is he's really quoting a lot to the Jewish population that, I'll just have to go to it and pull it up real quick, is Zechariah's prophecy, and where in Zechariah prophesies is that they take a hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, Zechariah chapter 8, and this is one of the big swaying factors amongst a lot of evangelicals. I'm seeing it even with more Messianic believers as well, and Yitzhak Shapir and others are misquoting this, and I bring this up mainly because to me it's still part of the Noahide movement indirectly, because this is where they're taking in chapter 8 of Zechariah verses 22 and 23. They are propagating this last part of the verse here, that this is in the latter days, it'll be the Gentiles are going to take the hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, and they will say, we hear the Lord is with you. And because of that, they don't focus on actually what it says in Hebrew. I mean, they do focus on Hebrew, but they don't focus the first part of it where it says, Vahi chazeku bekanaf ish Yehudi. The Ish Yehudi, that Jewish man, they never want to tell the Christian about that, which to me is Jesus Christ. They take a hold of the wing of a Christian of this Jewish man, and they say, Lemor nelecha imchem ki shemanu Elohim imchem. We hear that God is with you, which this was none other than Jesus Christ, because we know that when he was born, he was given the name Emmanuel, God with us. And I see this as a major danger because, like in the case of Yitzhak Shapir, he's telling the people, especially they're focusing on the South American people because they consider them the house of Israel. And again, trying to establish a fake millennial movement by bringing back the the house of Israel into the modern state of Israel, and saying that they must go into the rabbis because you're going to take a hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, but they never quote the part that it's Ish Yehudi. They always just say, look, we hear that God is with you. Imchem. Okay, and the Imchem, to me, this was fulfilled in the book of Acts when we saw there were Judeans from all the known world. They spoke in their own native tongues of all these different nations, including China, including what would be nowadays modern-day Saudi Arabia, places like that. They came in, and literally, even in the Hebrew Matthew, when Yeshua, when he was up in the Galilee region, it says they took a hold of his kanaf, but yet the woman with the blood issue takes a hold of his tzitzit. So there's a little difference in there. I know that that's debatable, doesn't matter though. But the issue is that Scripture was being fulfilled already. And I actually thought myself maybe this was a future fulfillment until a friend of ours said to us, told my wife, Steve knows Hebrew, you should have him read this. It says Ish Yehudi. It's a Jewish man. And so when they take a hold of the wing, or even if you want to say tzitzit of that Jew, it was a Jewish man, which was Jesus Christ. He was the one they took a hold of. And on the day of Pentecost, when they came out of that upper room, they were filled with the Spirit of Almighty God. And as they were filled with the Spirit of God, they wanted to know what could they do to receive this. But now they're applying this very passages that all Christianity eventually, especially the Spanish Jews, because of the Inquisition, must go back underneath the Talmudic rabbis, which I know you're against. They must go underneath that. And I see that as part of this movement that they're trying to do. You know, and no doubt these people, even Yitzhak Shapira, I think he really believes in his heart what he's doing is right. I don't think he's doing it as a hypocrite. But at the same time, these are those dangers that we see as part of this Noahide movement in a roundabout way.
The reason, Dr. Brown, is you endorsed kosher pig by Yitzhak Shapira.
Well, I wasn't saying it because of this.
I know, but I saw that you did, and I don't know if you're aware of some of his teachings.
Yeah, let me just say this. I actually got a lot of flack from counter-missionary rabbis that I've dialogued with for years, and they said he has a lot of errors in his text, and you shouldn't have endorsed it. So there were rabbis that were mad at me for doing that, thinking that it was beneath me or something. But the first thing is, I saw with Yitzhak Shapira a real desire to reach Jewish people with the gospel. And often in the Messianic Jewish movement, there's very little outreach. There's a lot of emphasis on, building congregations and Jewish identity, but very little outreach. So I really wanted to encourage his evangelism. And the endorsement, because I was not able to go through the whole book carefully when it came to me, was to say he addresses controversial issues, so give it a serious study. There's a lot of controversy here. Look at it seriously. Now, of course, he's interacted with some of the same counter-missionary rabbis and then put out an extensive re-edition of the book in Hebrew, which he sent me, and he said he's vetted it with scholars at Bar-Ilan University, etc. But either way, whether the contents is fully accurate or not, I haven't gone through the Hebrew edition with a lot of the detail in there. And I've continued to interact with his critics and Orthodox rabbis who say here's an error here and there. But the key point is this. Whatever he's teaching about coming under the authority of the rabbis or the ongoing validity of Talmud, I was not aware of any of that whatsoever at that time.
Okay.
That's something that came up subsequently. If I'd been aware of that, as much as I appreciated his zeal to evangelize our people and proclaiming clearly the deity of Jesus, that would have pushed me away from an association on that level. So he and I know that we have strong differences. In fact, at the last Messianic Jewish Alliance conference, I specifically did a whole teaching why we're not under rabbinic authority and why we reject that. 8 hours of teaching, which he understood was a direct difference with his position.
Okay, well, that's fair enough that you didn't know, so I apologize because I did, I thought you know exactly what he's teaching. So that's why I didn't know your stance on it. But just want you to be aware of Yitzhak Shapira, who entered the church through Mark Biltz, and then he got invited by some other pastors, And Mark Biltz fully agrees with him, and a lot of people are swayed the direction that they have to go back on their rabbis. Not even he claims that Christianity will not exist very soon. It will be completely eradicated. As an entity, it will not exist. He claims that New Testament does not apply to Gentiles at all. The only way they can be saved is by attaching themselves to Jews. It's, because Jesus supposedly is only for Jews. He also claims in his book, Kosher Cake, that Christ, the Messiah, is Metatron, which is a Zohar teaching. And if you do research who Metatron is, it's a fallen angel. He's got a lot of Kabbalah, Zohar, Talmud, and he gives Talmud authority. He calls it treasure of the Jewish people. So just kind of wanted you to be aware of Yitzhak Shapira. I have a lot of issues with him over some of his teachings.
Yeah, understandably. I was looking at one book which is a massive attack on his book. In fact, I think I've got it sitting here. On the one hand, the person writing to me is guilty of just an extreme replacement theology and even some anti-Jewish bias, but raises concerns. Look, I have a massive rabbinic library. I've studied with rabbis as best as I could, so if I'm going to interact with our historical literature, I want to do it fairly. I want to do it with understanding, because Talmud is very forbidding. You can't just read a quote here or there. It's a difficult thing to really understand the methodology and the interaction. So I've studied with rabbis as much as I can, and within our traditions or in the Siddur, the prayer book, there are beautiful prayers, there are beautiful traditions, there are things that are very noble, and there are other things that we categorically, systematically differ with. And especially the Kabbalistic system and kind of the counterfeit spiritual world, we would see a lot of that as really satanic. Mm-hmm. So I have no problem with it saying, hey, the way the Jews have looked at Metatron and the highest angel, and in the Talmud, he is likened to Yahweh. When God says in Exodus 24, "Come up here," that in Sanhedrin it says that when Yahweh says, "Come up here to me," that was actually Metatron speaking, because he is just like his master and things like that, to try to say, hey, look at this concept. It's a wrong concept. Look at it when it applies to Yeshua. For example, I've sought to do that with concepts like the Memra, the word of the Lord, or the Shekhinah, the presence of the Lord, the Sphirot, to try to build a bridge from a Jewish understanding, traditional understanding, say, okay, you see this, here, move over here, and now look at the reality in God's triunity. It's not as foreign as you think. Look at this, or as you understand the Memra, the word of the Lord, it's actually Yeshua. So I've tried to do those things, but that's, again, just as a bridge, believing that we can take a concept found in traditional Judaism and use it as a bridge to bring people to the gospel. But I will say this: if someone wanted to criticize me for writing an endorsement without more fully reviewing the contents, I accept it as a fair criticism. As my ultra-Orthodox rabbi friends that we battle constantly criticized me, and I said, all I was doing was saying it's controversial material, give it a look. I think you should really look at it. And they said, yeah, but your name carries weight, and when you say it, I thought, okay, fair enough. So the fact that you had a certain impression based on that, I know you've apologized, but I understand why. I fully understand why. And I accept the concern in terms of larger issues that someone could have thought I was endorsing those. So all clear. But thank you for bringing it up. I appreciate it.
That's something in the book I wrote, the second book I wrote, Yom Suf, Israel's Final Exodus. I wrote, like yourself, I've used a lot of rabbinical commentary, Rashi, etc., Ibn Ezra, etc., on trying to get our people to recognize who the Messiah is. And in fact, I'm working on a book now called What Have Rabbis Missed? And the whole premise of this, again, is trying to get the rabbis to recognize who Yeshua really was, that he was Jesus Christ, our Savior. So,
Dr. Brown, are you tired?
Yeah, we've kept him a long time.
Long. I just had one little question.
Oh yeah, but listen, it is. I just want to say this from the heart, because this is our first time really interacting. I just want to say that from your very first email to us, Stephen, that you've been very gracious. And then I know, Jana, just because I've been sending clips here and there, that you've raised some strong concerns. And I'm glad that we could talk at least some of these things through. And I want you to know publicly that I don't question your sincerity. I don't question the fact that you're trying to dig and do serious research, and that you're not just believing every type of conspiratorial Jews trying to take over the world lie, that you reject those the same way as I do, and that we do share some very serious concerns about aspects of ultra-Orthodox Judaism and theology, and that 100% our hearts beat to see Jewish people come to Jesus, outside of which they are as lost as anyone else. So I do appreciate you having me on. And yeah, it is. We've been on 2 hours, but appreciate the time, and hopefully we can interact in other settings and meet face to face in the future.
That sounds very good. Dr. Brown, we appreciate you coming on with us and having such a candid discussion and being able to lay things out. So it is a blessing to be able to share things openly and do it in a spirit of Christian love and not in factual ways, but yet being able to be candid. I think that's the way it should be.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for that. Thank you guys for watching Israeli News Live this evening. I'm sitting over here not doing what I'm supposed to do. I've never done this before, Dr. Brown, as far as this type of work. So, anyway.
Got it. And just a reminder for the folks that weren't here at the beginning, please visit my website, askdrbrown.org, askdrbrown.org. I think you'll find thousands of resources, articles, videos that you'll find valuable and helpful on the common ground that we do have. So hopefully folks can take advantage of that.
Yes, so definitely check out. We'll also put in the description below, I think I already did that, askdrbrown.org, where you can check out those things. And like yourself, we also have the extensive library. I always tell people, at Talmud, when you get it in the mail, it's not one little book. I said it's like the Encyclopedia Britannica, and of course we have Shulchan Aruch, Zohar, everything, all the Dead Sea Scroll volumes.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, well, absolutely. It will take another discussion about Talmud and all of that, but that's okay.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Yes. Thank you guys for watching, and if you want to stay with us just for a second, Dr. Brown, and God bless you guys, and Erev Tov.